The contingent from Phylace contained men from there and from flowery Piraeus, Demeter's sanctuary, from Iton, mother of sheep, Antron by the sea, and Tleus deep in grass. Warlike Protesilaus. The contingent from Phylace contained men from there and from flowery Piraeus, Demeter's sanctuary, from Iton, mother of sheep, Antron by the sea, and Tleus deep in grass. Warlike Protesilaus led them while he lived, but by now the black earth had received him. So his wife was left in Phylace, her cheeks lacerated, and his house half built. He had been the first of the Greeks to leap ashore, but a Trojan killed him as he did so. However, his followers were not left without a chief, though they did miss their leader. Podarces, ally of the war god, and son of Phylacus' son Iphiclus, lord of many sheep, commanded them. Podarces was a brother of the great-hearted Protesilaus, a younger brother, the warlike Protesilaus being both the older and the better man. So their troops did not lack a leader, though they missed excellent Protesilaus. This contingent came under his command in 40 black ships. The contingent from Phylace contained men from there and from flowery Piraeus, Demeter's sanctuary, from Iton, mother of sheep, Antron by the sea, and Tleus deep in grass. Warlike Protesilaus led them while he lived, but by now the black earth had received him. So his wife was left in Phylace, her cheeks lacerated, and his house half built. He had been the first of the Greeks to leap ashore, but a Trojan killed him as he did so. However, his followers were not left without a chief, though they did miss their leader. Podarces, ally of the war god and son of Phylacus' son Iphiclus, lord of many sheep, commanded them. Podarces was a brother of the great-hearted Protesilaus, a younger brother, the warlike Protesilaus being both the older and the better man. So their troops did not lack a leader, though they missed excellent Protesilaus. This contingent came under his command in 40 black ships. The contingent from Phyrae contained men who came from there by the Bebian lake, and from Bebe, Glaphrae, and well-built Iolcus. Admetus' son Eumelus led them in their 11 ships. Queenly Alcestis, Peleus' most beautiful daughter, had borne him to Admetus. Philoctetes the great archer brought a contingent in 7 ships, men from Methone, Thaumace, Melibea, and rugged Olizon. Each was manned by 50 oarsmen trained to fight with a bow, but Philoctetes lay in agony on the lovely isle of Lemnos, where the Greek army had left him, suffering from the poisonous bite of a malignant water snake. So he lay there pining, but the Greeks by their ships were soon to think once more of Lord Philoctetes. However, his followers were not left without a chief, though they did miss their leader. Medon, the bastard son of Oileus, whom Rhene bore to Oileus, sacker of towns, commanded them. The contingent from Triche, from Itomi with its terraced hills, and from Oechalia, the city of Oechalian Eurytus, was led by 2 sons of Asclepius, the admirable healers Podalirius and Machaon. This contingent came in 30 hollow ships. The contingent from Ormenion and the spring of Hyperia, from Asterion and the white towers of Titonus, was led by Eurypylus, Euaemon's splendid son. This contingent came under his command in 40 black ships. The contingent from Argissa and from Geritone, Orthe, Helone, and the white town of Olooson was led by resolute Polypoetes with Leontius, both Lapiths. Polypoetes was son of Pierithus, son of immortal Zeus. Famous Hippodamia had conceived him for Pierithus on the day when Pierithus took his revenge on the centaurs, shaggy people of the wilds, expelled them from Mount Pelion, and drove them into the hands of the Theses. Polypoetes was not alone, but shared his command with Leontius, ally of the war god, and son of proud Coronus, son of Ceneus. This contingent came under their leader's command in 40 black ships. From Cyprus, Guneus brought a contingent in 22 ships, consisting of Aenians and resolute Peribians, who built their homes around wintry Dodona and tilled the fields by the delectable Titaressus. This river pours its lovely stream into the Peneus, yet does not mingle with the silver eddies of Peneus, but floats along on top of them like olive oil, being a part of the waters of Styx, the river of dread oath. The Magnetes came in a contingent led by Prothous, son of Tentriodon. The Magnetes lived by the Peneus and by Mount Pelion of the trembling leaves. These were the men that swift Prothous led. This contingent came under his command in 40 black ships. These then were the leaders and commanders of the Greeks. Now you tell me, Muse, of all the men and horses that crossed with Agamemnon and Menelaus, which were by far the best? Of the horses, the best by far were the mares of Admetus, which his son Eumelus drove. Swift as birds, they were alike in coat and age, and of exactly equal height. These mares had been reared in Perea by Apollo, lord of the silver bow, to strike panic in the ranks. Of the men, Ajax, son of Telamon, was by far the best, but only while Achilles was in a rage, since he, matchless son of Peleus, was the finest man of all, and drove the finest horses. But he was lying now by his seafaring beaked ships, nursing his implacable anger against Agamemnon, son of Atreus, shepherd of the people. Meanwhile on the beach his men amused themselves with archery and throwing discuses and spears. The horses stood idly, each by its own chariot, munching clover and parsley from the marsh. Their masters' chariots lay covered up inside their huts, and the men themselves, who missed their war-loving chief, strolled aimlessly about the camp and did no fighting. The Greeks advanced as if fire was grazing over the whole land. Earth groaned beneath them, as it does when Zeus, who delights in thunder, is angry and lashes the ground above the giant Typhoeus in the Aremian mountains, where people say Typhoeus sleeps. So the earth groaned loudly under the feet of marching men as they advanced at speed across the plain. The messenger goddess swift Iris, quick as the wind, was sent to the Trojans by Zeus, who drives the storm cloud, with the bad news. They had all gathered, young and old alike, in assembly at Priam's gates. Swift-footed Iris came up to them and spoke in a voice like that of Priam's son Polites, who, because of his speed, was posted as lookout for the Trojans on top of old Aeetes' tomb, waiting for an attack from the Greek ships. Swift-footed Iris spoke with his voice. "Venerable sir, you are still as fond of interminable talk as you were in peacetime, but inescapable war is upon us. Indeed, I have taken part in many battles, but I have never seen so great and formidable a force. They are advancing over the plain to fight at the town like the leaves of the forest or the sands of the sea. Hector, I urge you above all to do as I say. In his great town Priam has many allies, but these scattered foreigners all speak different languages. Let their own commanders in each case issue orders to them, draw up their people and lead them out to battle." So she spoke, and Hector did not fail to recognize the words of a goddess, and immediately dismissed the assembly. They rushed to arms. The gates were all thrown open, and the whole army charged out, foot soldiers and charioteers. The noise they made was tremendous. Outside the town, and some way off in the plain, there is a high mound with open ground on every side, which men call Bramble Hill, but the immortals call the tomb of dancing Myrene. It was here that the Trojans and their allies were marshalled for battle. Priam's son, great Hector of the flashing helmet, was in charge of the Trojans. With him marched by far the finest and most numerous force, keen spearmen all of them. The Dardanians were led by Anchises' admirable son Aeneas, whom celestial Aphrodite conceived for Anchises, goddess sleeping with mortal, on the slopes of Mount Ida. Aeneas was not in sole command, but was supported by Antenor's 2 sons, Archilochus and Acamas, both experienced in every kind of fighting. The men that lived in Zelea, under the lowest spurs of Mount Ida, and drank the dark waters of Aesepus, a prosperous Trojan clan, were led by the famous son of Lycaon, Pandarus, whose bow was a gift from Apollo himself. The men from Adrestia and the land of Ephesus, from Pythia and the steep slopes of Tyrea, were led by Adrestus, and Amphius in his linen body protection, the two sons of Merops of Percote, who was the ablest prophet of his day and had forbidden his sons to go off to the killing fields, but they would not listen to him. The demons of death led them on. The men who lived in Percote, Practius, and in Cestus, in Abydos and holy Arisbe, were commanded by Asius, son of Hyrtacus, leader of men, whom his big and glossy horses had brought from Arisbe beside the river Sileis. Hippothous was in command of the tribes of Pelasgian spearmen who lived in fertile Larissa. Hippothous was joined in command by Pyleus, ally of the war god. They were the two sons of Pelasgian Lethus, son of Teutomus. Acamas and the warrior Pyrrhus led the Thracians, whose lands are bounded by the swift-flowing Hellespont. Euphemus, son of Olympian-bred Treasonus, son of Ceas, led the warlike Sicones. Pyraechmes commanded the Paeonians with their curving bows. They had come from far, from Amydon and the banks of the broad river Axius, the Axius whose waters are the most beautiful that flow over the earth. Manly Pylaemenes led the Paphlagonians from the lands of the Eneti, from which the wild mules come. The Eneti lived in Cytorus, round Sesamon, in impressive homesteads by the river Parthenius, in Cromna, Aegialus, and lofty Erythene. Ardias and Epistrophus led the Halizones from distant Alybe, the native home of silver. Chromis and Enomus were in command of the Mysians. Enomus was an augur, but all his bird lore did not save him from the black hand of death. He fell a victim to swift-footed Achilles in the riverbed when he was making havoc of the Trojans and their allies. Phorcys and godlike Ascanius led the Phrygians, eager for battle, from remote Ascania. The Meonians were led by Mestles and Antiphus, the sons of Talimenes, whose mother was a Gygaean lake. These two led the Meonians, whose native land is on the Tmolus. Nastes led the Carians, who do not speak Greek. They lived in Miletus, thickly wooded Mount Photires, the streams of Meander, and Mycale with its steep peak. These were the men whom Amphimachus and Nastes brought. Nastes and Amphimachus, the splendid sons of Nemaon. Amphimachus went into battle decked in gold like a girl, the fool. Not that it saved him from an ugly end. He fell to swift-footed Achilles there in the riverbed, and warlike Achilles made off with the gold. Sarpedon and matchless Glaucus led the Lycians from distant Lycia and the eddying river Xanthus.